edition of HR Hot Topics. I'm your host, Jodi Schafer, and as you can see, I have a guest with me today. This is Marcia Cornell. Marcia's been a member of the HR team for a number of years. She is our resident compensation expert, and I've asked Marcia here today because as we prepare for the new calendar year, and as we look at our budgets for next year, compensation is obviously a huge factor in those budgets. Cost of labor is often one of the highest components of any employer's budget. And next year, especially with earned sick time coming into play for our Michigan employers and increases to minimum earning thresholds for your salaried exempt employees, we're going to have several financial hits that we have to budget for. And many of our employers, believe it or not, do not have some sort of formal compensation structure in place. We just have this sort of random philosophy about what we pay people. It's often rooted in what the market required at the time of hire, and then we just pay them gradual increases over time from there. It can create disparity internally. And so I thought now would be a really good time to talk about structures. Now, the compensation structure you build can be very sophisticated, and that's a lot of Marcia's experience, actually. She spent 30 years working at the state of Michigan, administering very complex, sophisticated compensation structures with levels and steps and union contracts and all of that. So they can be very complex, but they can also be a much more scaled down version, but still valuable for any organization and something that's more manageable for our small employers. And so I've asked Marcia here today to talk about two things that are not the same. The first is how you create a compensation plan for your organization. And then the second is how you administer the plan going forward. So with that, I'm going to kick it off to Marcia. And Marcia, if you could just kind of give our listeners a very high level kind of 1, 2, 3 for how you build a compensation plan, and then we'll talk about administration next.
Well, the first thing we're going to start with is a job description. If you don't have those, HRM can certainly help you create those. We need to make sure that the job description correctly reflects what your expectations are of that job. You can't pull one off the internet and slap it into your organization and assume that's going to work. We do talk to employees about their job descriptions to make sure that we validate that it is accurate before we go any further in the analysis process.
It also creates buy-in.
Yes,
There's nothing more insulting than somebody who doesn't do your job putting what they believe your responsibilities are on paper and then giving it to you after the fact, and they have no idea what you do on a daily basis. So if you're going to embark in this process, and Marcia and I were talking offline kind of in preparation for this episode about how important transparency is, one of the ways that you create transparency is you build buy-in. And so this is a really great opportunity. Even if you had job descriptions written out, you could have your existing employees who are in those roles look at those job descriptions, have a conversation. I know when Marcia goes in as a member of HRM and has those one-off conversations with employees, it's really empowering for the employee, and it's important for the whole process. But as you said, it also makes sure that we have an accurate description of what this role does.
Correct.
Okay, so job description's number one. Then what do we do?
The next step is job ranking within your organization. You know the value within your organization of each individual job, and from that you know which ones are the most valuable, that bring the most impact, that have the most responsibility within your organization, all the way down to the entry-level positions. You have to have a clear idea of how all that fits together. From there, you would then go on to something called a market study or a market analysis.
So that's step 3 then.
Step 3.
Yep.
And we're looking at similar positions, not comparing job titles, but you're actually looking at responsibilities and collecting data that shows what the minimum and maximum pay range for a like position would be. From the market study, you lay side by side the position that you have within your organization to what you've discovered while doing the market study. And that creates natural banding of positions based on responsibilities and impact to the organization. And from there flows a salary schedule that will have a minimum salary for that band and a maximum salary for that band.
Yep. So just to recap, we've got 3 key steps to create the compensation structure. 1, understand the responsibilities of each job. 2, do that internal ranking or hierarchy so that we know the positions that should be paid the most all the way down to the ones that are paid the least based on, as you said, impact, value, complexity. And then 3, you go out to the market and you see what the market says. Now, there are times, and the reason that we advise you to do that internal ranking as the second step is because sometimes the market would say a band or a position should be paid X. But when you look at it within your organization, you actually value that a little bit higher. And that's okay. The market doesn't have to be the end-all, be-all. That internal ranking is sort of the validation step between what you're seeing in the market versus how you are using those positions internally. So it's really important that you have that. And if there are opportunities, or situations where the market data would rank these positions 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way to 10, and internally you ranked them 1 to 10, but you had a couple of them flip-flopped when you match them side by side, why? And can you defend that, right? So you don't always have to just default to what the market says. You want to really understand value to your position. So Marcia, so we've created the band, right? We have a minimum and a maximum for each one of our positions. Now we're going to flip to how we administer our comp plan once we have it. And this is really where Marcia's got a lot of experience. She was administering very complex comp plans. But even in a smaller organization with just a handful of employees, you still have to have some understanding and some processes, some philosophies to help you use the data that you've now collected. So let's talk about administration.
Okay. Well, we're going to place the existing salary information for your organization next to the results of the market study. Based on that, you're going to run into 3 situations. One, where somebody isn't even on the minimum of the salary range, and you're going to need to make some decisions on how you're going to move them onto the range.
So that's an increase of some sort, right?
Right.
Typically.
And if it's a large increase, you may have to do it in chunks, which I've seen happen. Or you may have somebody that just naturally flows right onto the salary schedule, which is great. Or you may have somebody who's topped out already. And if that's the case, you place them at the top end, but then you need to have some theory or philosophy on how you're going to reward those employees. We never say, don't give a pay increase because they're at the top.
Don't take money away either.
Right.
Like if you've created a maximum and you've got somebody who's been there for 20 years and they're making more than your maximum, don't take money away to fit them into the band.
Right.
Marcia didn't say that, and neither did Jodi. Don't do that.
No.
But you can hold them where they are. And perhaps, as you said, maybe it's bonuses or something like that. We probably won't increase base pay because we want to allow the band time to eventually catch up to them.
Right.
So you might hold base pay the same, but maybe it's incentives or bonuses, et cetera, that you continue to reward that kind of performance. So you're going to take your existing staff and their pay, you're going to compare it to what your new comp plan has for minimum, maximum, and you're going to have to make decisions around that. Okay, so now we've got everybody placed in the band. We've made our decisions. We're moving forward. Now what do we have to do?
Now you need to realize that this is a living document, which means you need to care for it. You need to look at it every year. You need to have, maybe it's analysis on what the average salary increase is for that calendar year, fiscal year, and you need to apply that and wash the schedule that way so that everybody is keeping pace with the market. If you just take what we give you now and don't do anything to it, it's going to be out of date in a year. In addition to that, you need to know how fast your organization is willing to move people up through the salary ranges.
Yeah.
And then you also need to know that if you, in a year, create a new position because your organization needs it, you go through the same steps of creating the job description,
sure,
doing a market analysis, placing them within the ranges, and then getting the person in the correct spot on the salary range.
Yep. And on that point, typically you've got minimums and maximums for these bands. The bands are often tighter, meaning the minimum and maximum are closer together in terms of dollars for positions that people aren't in all that long. So if you have entry-level roles that people typically are in for a year or two, and then they sort of move to a more senior level of that, those bands are often tighter. When you get into positions where they are for many years, a managerial position, something along that line, the bands, the distance between the minimum and the maximum might be wider, allowing for more growth over time. So when Marcia says philosophy and processes, that's part of what you're talking about.
Right.
The other is generally when somebody's new to a role, they're placed on the lower end of the band. When they have more experience that they bring to the role, they should be on the higher end of the band. So that also helps with the internal equity piece. And I love what you said about living document. You have to care for it.
Yes, you do.
So if you're going to put the time and energy into this, make sure it's something that will serve you well, not just in the moment, but over time, and make sure whoever is administering it understands how to do so. HRM can certainly assist with that as well. So we can help with the creation of the plan, but we can also help with the training and sort of the coaching that comes along with caring for that plan over time so that it continues to work for you. So with that, I'm going to close our conversation on compensation. Marcia, thank you for being here. Appreciate it. And I want to remind all of you that on December 4th, we are doing a free webinar from 11 to 12. We're partnering with Maynard Casterison, which is a regional accounting firm here in the state of Michigan. And we're going to be looking at the Earned Sick Time Act from two different lenses. Myself, I'm going to be talking about this from a HR lens, specifically around implementation. The Maynard representatives are going to be talking about this from a financial lens, payroll processing, that kind of thing. So it's really a can't miss. It is free. And then we'll have ample time for Q&A at the end of that. If we have the registration link live at the time of distribution of this video, we'll make sure to include it at the end. Otherwise, we will send it to you as soon as we have it. So with that, we will end. We'll see you back for our December edition where we talk about something probably holiday related, or maybe if we're lucky, the legislature got involved in earned sick time and made some much needed changes to that. And if that's the case, I'll be thrilled to come on and make that the topic of December. So either way, stay tuned, folks. We'll see you then.